With week 9 of the NFL season officially wrapped up, we now can move on to week 10 for the Dallas Cowboys. We do know, of course, this was not a victory week for the Dallas Cowboys. Sunday, the Dallas Cowboys lost to the Philadelphia Eagles. A final score of Philadelphia 28, Dallas 23. Again, it was a game of, we all know at this point, the fan base. We could talk about the refereeing. We talk about the officiating. We could talk about the bad calls, the missed opportunities. We could talk about the unfortunate plays. We're talking about, of course, we can go back to the Dak Prescott 2-point conversion, toe out of bounds, no good. After it's originally called good, again, we're talking about bad play calls or bad, again, just decision making at inopportune times. But the Dallas Mavericks fall to 5-3. The Philadelphia Eagles are now sitting at 8-1. They have taken control of the NFC East, but it is a long season. We do still have a matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles this season. We still have another game against the New York Giants. We have 2 against the Washington Commanders. This thing is far from over. The Dallas Cowboys are going to start to see a little stretch of this season coming up, of our schedule more specifically. That the Dallas Cowboys, if we take care of a business and take advantage of, again, teams that we should at least be able to be in the mix with. We do know this is a long season. We do know the Cowboys have had a couple bumps this season, but the Dallas Cowboys are still in the mix for the NFC. I'm gonna say the division race, the NFC East, but also to be to show that we are a team that can be able to maybe possibly be a contender. Because again, we do know it's a long season. Anything can happen. You just want to find yourself in that playoff mix. So let's get into it a little bit. Dak Prescott, 29 of 44, 374 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, no interceptions. Dak Prescott played the game of his life. And I don't want to even say it's the best game of his career, because we've seen some very good games from Dak. But this season, I'm going to say it's one of his best, because I'm going to say over from the beginning, Dak Prescott showed control. He showed that this is his offense. And we do know, we've seen early on in this season, especially obviously after the move on from Kellen Moore, we were literally going to be left to ask ourselves, what exactly is this offense? All throughout preseason, training camp, all you hear is the Tex Coast offense. This is going to be a rendition for the Cowboys of course, the original West Coast type offense Mike McCarthy loves to employ. New, I guess, offensive coordinator or just guy in the room that helps Mike McCarthy game plan, Brian Schottenheimer. He's very accustomed to the West Coast type offense. So the West Coast offense is going to be based around quick timing, getting the ball out of your hands, getting the ball to your playmakers. And that's why you brought in a guy like Brandon Cooks. You made the trade for a guy like Brandon Cooks to add just that extra weapon, I guess, we're talking about in the quick passing game, because we do know we already have in CeeDee Lamb. That's a playmaker. That's a guy you're not going to be worried about being able to get his as long as he's getting these opportunities. But what you're going to have to ask yourself now, who are the focal points around a guy like, CeeDee Lamb, opposite of a CeeDee Lamb? Me personally, I'm a fan of what we saw from a young guy like Jake Ferguson at the tight end position. Of course, unfortunately, and I'm going to say now, we can talk about it a little bit, but a lot of Cowboys fans at this point are not happy. And again, we call it revisionist history, but a lot of people can kind of go back and look at the second round drafting of Luke Schoonmaker, tight end out of University of Michigan. A lot of people now, especially with the makeup of this team, we're talking about we could have gone towards offensive line help. We could have gone towards more defensive help. We could have gone to another wide receiver position, whatever it is. But Luke Schoonmaker seems at this point we could have gotten a better bang for our buck at another position. Again, it's all revisionist history. With 2020, hindsight is 2020. All that good stuff. Of course, you can always look back and see what mistakes when things don't pan out, or at least not panning out early on. But a guy like Jake Ferguson showed himself to be a real weapon in this Philadelphia Eagles game. That's also a positive I'm going to say we should be able to take from this.
The Dallas Cowboys once again fall to the Philadelphia Eagles with the final score, Dallas Cowboys 23, now 5-3, 2-3 on the road. And the Philadelphia Eagles move up to 8-1, 4-0 at home. Again, the Dallas Cowboys do have a matchup left against the Philadelphia Eagles. This is going to be a part of the season where the Dallas Cowboys can still show that they are a team that has, again, even a little bit of potential. We do know at the end of the day, this is a every single week type league. And again, it's about matchups. It's not even about teams matching up against the better team. Sometimes it's about certain teams are just better equipped to play against another team. So the Dallas Cowboys, we know this is the division rivalry game. Of course, Dak Prescott, once again, 29 of 44, 374 yards passing, 3 total touchdowns. Dak Prescott had a nice game. And again, it was more out of the simple fact, not even just the statistics showing up, but Dak Prescott, there were not many times that he looked uncomfortable himself. We do know, unfortunately, this O-line has not played well. And to me, at the end of the day, that's kind of what was this team's undoing doing in this specific game, especially. We do know, again, because of course the Dallas Cowboys, you could talk about Tony Pollard in the run game, 12 carries, 51 yards. Our running game has not been anything to call home about. It's nothing been amazing, I guess you want to say, the production. But the Dallas Cowboys, we have still had opportunities to show that we are now a team that can be somewhat balanced. To me, we're struggling to get Tony Pollard out in space. That's what this coaching staff is still, for some reason, not really giving us. Again, we've gotten very used to that change of pace back that Tony Pollard became. Because, again, playing off of a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, you're more downfield type runner. You're going to be able to find holes because defenses are going to be used to a different type of runner. And, again, all of a sudden, Tony Pollard would come in, a couple quick steps, and he's off to the races. But when you're not able to do that, because, again, there is no change of pace back. I can also say I want to see this team give Rico Dowdle way more opportunity than he's gotten. He's shown, and again, in the brief opportunities he's had, again, he breaks off a nice run this game, comes back with a holding call. To me, and again, one of those phantom calls that is very ticky-tack calls that you can't make in this specific type game because, again, if you're not going to call it down the middle of the field, you can't call them at all. Of course, the Dallas Cowboys, and we can look at the penalty discrepancy on this game, both teams end up with 10 total penalties against themselves, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys each. But it was when the calls were happening. Of course, we saw a absolutely bad, especially in my estimation, but just hearing the national media talk about the game actually as you're broadcasting it. The bad defensive pass interference call on a guy like Stephon Gilmore. The ball's thrown out of bounds. He tries to make a play on the ball. Still, they call a bad call. And again, it's not about when it is. It's not about the fact, that the call is made. It's about when it's made. And again, we're talking about this consistently. Also, we can also say that we got a little bit of, I just want to say any luck. But there were some great opportunities, especially in that last drive. The Dallas Cowboys somehow make a miracle happen and end up down at the 6-yard line of the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, we know we cannot end up getting the ball in the end zone, which, again, to some extent, I guess we can still kind of keep harping on the red zone opportunities not being taken advantage of this season. In 3 losses for the Cowboys, majority of our issues are arising from the simple fact that we cannot close the deal at certain times when we need to in the red zone. So we have still got to lock that up. But you did see CeeDee Lamb, 11 catches on 16 targets, 191 yards. That's the biggest thing I'm taking from this game, in addition to a guy like Jake Ferguson. Also, 7 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown. And also, let's throw this guy in the mix. 3 catches, 49 yards, and a touchdown. 32 being the longest. Jalen Tolbert is showing himself to be a guy that we should be able to get more chances. Michael Gallup, at this point of his career, he is not a guy that we can count on, because one thing is for certain, he's going to be inconsistent. And sometimes I'm not sure if he's still thinking too much about his leg. I'm not sure if he's just not comfortable in just the way his body feels overall. But Michael Gallup himself said this is the best he's felt in a couple years. So we cannot continue to give him that benefit of the doubt. If you're saying you feel good, but you're not playing up to your level, or that we're expecting, at least to the level of that contract that you received, the extension, then we're going to have to get other guys opportunities. And I want to see a guy like Jalen Tolbert get more chances. I want to see Cavante Turpin, who ends up with a touchdown catch in this game, get more opportunities. Because we're now starting to see this is the part of the season where we can't have any more missteps and errors. Because, again, the NFC conference in general is so close to the point. One bad stretch of a season, I can say a couple of games back to back, you can find yourself out of that wild card mix, if anything. So the Dallas Cowboys, we have got to figure this out. But again, I want to see less Michael Gallup, and unfortunately to him, but I want to see way less Michael Gallup, more Jalen Tolbert, more Cavante Turpin. Again, Jake Ferguson to me, and I'm going to say it now, Brandon Cooks, we still know he definitely is going to be a guy that we should hopefully be trying to get his opportunities when he can. But Jake Ferguson to me, in this perfect world, I'm going to say I want to see CeeDee Lamb being my main number one, again, just target receiver, I guess. But then you're going to look at Jake Ferguson. I think Jake Ferguson should be a guy you can potentially see getting 10 targets a week. Because, again, Jake Ferguson is showing, and again, there were some times in this past game against the Eagles, Jake Ferguson made a nice move. I believe it's the incompletion ends up being the turnover on downs. We're talking about the pass Dak Prescott makes to Jalen Tolbert down the right side of the field, ends up being incomplete. Jake Ferguson actually beats his man up the seam. So we're going to be able to see, of course, this coaching staff can go watch the film. You can see what Jake Ferguson can bring to this game. And again, if you're going to liken him again to a sense of, I guess if you find looking for any urgency, you're going to be able to focus on a key that Jake Ferguson is a guy that we need to get more chances going forward. Because again, I'm not calling him a guy like Travis Kelce, but he's shown he is a receiving tight end. On the other side of the ball, the defensive side, Damone Clark leads the Dallas Cowboys in total tackles with 11, 8 solo, 1 tackle for loss. Micah Parsons was all over the field in this game. We can literally talk about this every single week. It is going to be one of these situations where Micah Parsons is going to always be held. He's going to always be pulled, be grabbed. And for some reason, these officials are just not giving these calls. I'm not understanding why. We're talking about Micah Parsons, 9 total tackles, 5 solo, 1.5 sacks, a tackle for loss. But he forced so many pressures. He forced Jalen Hurts off of his spot so many times this game. Things that don't show up on the stat sheet. Marquise Bell, 8 total tackles. Malik Hooker, 6 tackles. This was one of those games. Again, we had every opportunity. It just came up short. But what I don't want to see this team do is pretty much try to scrap everything, because there are some positives. I will say, though, Dan Quinn, to me, I want him to show his trust, a little bit more trust in just the Dallas Cowboys' secondary. Because, again, one thing we've seen over this last few weeks especially, but throughout this entire season, once the Trayvon Diggs injury happens, of course, unfortunately, we will watch sometimes. It'll be a perfect rushing situation for our pass rushers. And Dan Quinn not only will send our rushers, and we're sitting at sometimes we'll send an extra blitzer. We'll be playing soft coverage, sometimes giving up easy first downs, giving up easy completions. I want to see Dan Quinn. Of course, we try not to criticize too much because he's worked wonders for this team, but we have got to get every phase of this game. We're talking about offense, defense, and special teams on one page. Kevontae Turpin had a nice game, and talking about special teams when it comes to the return game. Also, we can talk about, of course, a guy like Brandon Aubrey knocking down his long 51-yard field goal attempt. So we've seen that this team still has a chance to find themselves in the mix. We just have got to close up these final things, because, again, you have to tie up loose ends. At the end of the day, it's a game of inches. It's a game of simple mistakes, and sometimes those can be the ones that are most detrimental.
It's about time for us as Dallas Cowboys fans to start having a conversation about right tackle Terrence Steele. We do know, of course, he just got an extension. Although coming off of that ACL injury, he has not looked, I would say he hasn't looked like his former self at all, and even anything close to it. He got beat many times, and so we're talking about the NFL game is so fast, it's so fast-paced, especially the passing game. It's all about timing. One thing you cannot do is throw off timing. You saw many times, especially this Eagles game, Dak Prescott is forced off his spot after about a second. You're not able to go through all your reads. You're not able to keep your eyes downfield because you're trying to get all away from these potential pass rushers. So Terrence Steele, this is going to be something that has got to be focused on. I'm going to say the next couple of weeks, of course, because, again, one thing we're going to have to also, my personal opinion, I'm not saying Chuma Edoga is anything special either, but of course we're gonna have Tyron Smith. We know in and out of the lineup, but at left tackle, I want to see Chuma Edoga get a little bit of opportunity at right tackle. Let him get some. Wasn't doing just mainly through practice or anything just coming up these next couple weeks. We need to see Chuma Edoga get some opportunity at the right tackle position, because, again, we're going to find ourselves in a bit of trouble, because, again, the NFL is not, again, having any type of sense of, we're talking about weakness when it comes to pass rushers. Every team is going to have at least one or two guys that are going to be able to get after the quarterback, But one thing is going to be for sure, teams are going to start taking advantage of Terrence Steele as we go on. We're not the only ones watching the film. The Cowboys have got to lock these things in, because, again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's not an issue. It's not something that we should be worried about. It is definitely something that needs to be, again, made a focal point of this coaching staff. We do now see the 5-3 Dallas Cowboys facing off versus the 2-7 New York Giants next Sunday at 3:30. Unfortunately, Daniel Jones has torn his ACL. We do know they've had a little bit of flip-flop type situation at the quarterback position between Daniel Jones, Tyrod Taylor. So now you're going to have to see exactly where the Giants are focused on for the future. But the Dallas Cowboys have got to come in here ready, because we've seen what we look like against a team like Josh Dobbs and the Arizona Cardinals a little earlier. The formerly Arizona Cardinal Josh Dobbs, now with the Minnesota Vikings. We saw exactly what the Cowboys looked like that week. That was not a game I was really worried about, But the Cowboys did not take care of business. So you cannot let records get in the way. We are now going to start to see that this next 4-game stretch for the Dallas Cowboys is going to be a perfect opportunity for us to get ourselves right back in the mix and show that we are still one of those top level teams if everything is going the way it should. So the Dallas Cowboys, once again, New York Giants versus the Dallas Cowboys next Sunday, 3:30. So another NFC East battle for the Cowboys. We have got to continue to lock down and we've got to continue to progress. I want to see guys like Hunter Lipke. One thing I'm not understanding, why is Hunter Lipke not getting opportunities in the red zone? We've seen many times, we know with Dak Prescott, we know he can use his legs now at times, but what we got really used to during the red zone, I'm going to say especially the earlier years of Dak Prescott, the Ezekiel Elliott combination. Those two guys especially were beasts in the red zone. You didn't really know what to expect, but we knew Zeke Elliott was like a battering ram down there, especially the last couple years, where his game somewhat athletically did start to tail off a little bit. He was still going to be a very vital part of the red zone offense because he can go get those tough yards, I'm going to say, excuse me. I feel like a guy like Hunter Lipke, Rico Dowdle, those two guys especially should be guys that we should be focused on giving those opportunities to. Tony Pollard is what Tony Pollard is. He's not going to be a downfield back. I guess you want to say lower your shoulder, lower your helmet, whatever it is, and try to get those tough physical yards every single play. So you have got to put other guys in position for them to show that they do have the ability for that. So the Cowboys lock this thing down. Again, we can easily go to the part where we're starting to say, woe is me, the sky is falling. I don't feel like we're there yet, but we have got to continue to improve. We got to continue to get better. And again, I can't blame any Dallas Cowboys fan right now if you're being pessimistic, if you're still being optimistic. Either side to me cannot be wrong because again, neither one of us at the end of the day wants this team to fail. We want this team to be as successful as they can be. So as always, I appreciate you guys for the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. Definitely throw your comments in. And again, for sure, I want you guys to go ahead and boost these likes because again, what that does is boost the algorithms. The videos are easier to get around to other like-minded Cowboys fans such as yourself. I appreciate all the support as always. And one thing we always say, go Cowboys.